Now, with Daniel Craig's reign as James Bond over, there's been rife speculation about who will fill his shoes, with Hollywood superstars like Idris Elba, Tom Hardy tipped to be the next 007, but ex-British spy John Taylor has stuck his oar into the debate, telling audiences at the Cheltenham Literature Festival that the only thing intelligence chiefs would want is that James Bond should be a black man or a woman, and it would make those sort of people want to join our intelligence services. Right. Do you think he actually meant that, or he thought he was saying the right thing at the Cheltenham Literary Festival or whatever it was to try to fit in? But should the next 007 be black or a woman or both? Or should we just leave classics like James Bond well alone? Let me know your thoughts by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And while you're there, go and vote in our poll. I will bring you those results very, very shortly. That is active on Twitter. But to debate this, I'm joined by former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, social commentator Joanna Jarjue, and writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan. Great to have you all on the show. Thank you very, very much. Look, Henry, I'll start with you. Should we have a black woman as the next James Bond?
No. I mean, that's not going to be James.
Oh, OK, Henry, let's start with Henry.
Bond, is it? Look, I think that James Bond is an iconic story, set of books and films. You just can't mess with that. And there are female heroines around. You know, look at Tomb Raider and so on. If you want a black hero, you want a transsexual hero, you want a female hero, whatever sort of hero you want, I'm sure there's a book and story out there already. If not, write one. Let's not, you know, so next it'll be Sherlock Holmes or what?
OK, Joanna, I'll go to you now. So, Joanna, do you think that a black lady should be the next James Bond? Joanna? No,
I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I can't hear anything that you guys are saying.
Fair enough. We'll go on to Anna, because I think you definitely can hear me, Anna. So, go on. Same question to you then. So, what do you think about this idea that maybe it will be a good thing to have the next James Bond as a black individual, man or woman?
I think the franchise is well past its sell-by date, and it's time that it was shaken and stirred, and we've got a female Bond and a male Moneypenny. How about that?
OK, what though, Anna, if the franchise then started hemorrhaging money, like we've seen with Doctor Who, for example? They had a female Doctor Who. Ratings tanked.
Stated. This idea of this man, who, by the way, if we were in real life, he'd be about 105 now, sleeping with all these women. There's no women in it, really, who are fully dressed and out of bed, so we need to change that for a start.
But why do we need to... Anna, can I ask you, with respect, seriously, Anna, why do we need to change that? Because, you know, some blokes... Right, like going to watch films with guns, naked women and macho men. And if you remove that, then they just won't watch those films, Anna.
But if it's about selling it, it's about getting a whole new audience. And also, in real life, say you were stuck on an island that was about to explode and you needed rescuing. Would you say no to a woman coming over in a helicopter with a rope? I don't think so. So it's absurd. And also, let's be honest, James Bond probably would have died of VD years ago because the number of women who slept...
Yeah. Look, to be fair, the biggest plot hole in James Bond would not be that the character does no longer match the description of the original Ian Fleming. I will give you that. I believe that I might now, fingers crossed, be able to introduce Joanna to the fray. Joanna, how would you feel about a black female James Bond?
Well, I think that with any fictional character, it's absolutely fine to kind of change their identity to an extent. You know, James Bond isn't quoted or isn't written as somebody who is necessarily a specifically white man. So to change his race, for example, I don't think would make any difference. You don't have to necessarily be white to be British. So anybody who has a problem with changing the race of James Bond is essentially saying that. However, you know, if somebody was to say, should we have a female James Bond, I would say, well, he's called James Bond, he is male, so you couldn't necessarily change his gender or his sexuality. But in terms of race, there is nothing about the James Bond story that ties him to being, I don't know, Irish or Scottish or something like that. So it's absolutely fine. And you also don't have to be white to be an MI5 either.
No, or indeed MI6. I mean, Henry, do you think some people would say that if Bond ended up, you know, being your kind of classic rainbow flag-wearing individual, or it turned into a woman, or they kind of diversified it or whatever, that maybe Bond would be the most visible symbol of capitulation to the woke brigade?
Well, I think so, Patrick. You know, I'm sorry, but I do. Why mess with it? Fine, it maybe Bond is outdated. I'm not arguing that it's not an outdated story. I quite enjoy them, but maybe it's outdated. I accept that. But why then take that story and change it?
Yeah.
And actually, why not create a new story? Create a modern story for the modern era. If you think it's outdated, I don't argue. But if you want to, I mean, it's like people who take a house, a nice sort of 400-year-old house with all the fittings, and then rip it out and put in modern fittings and change the character of it entirely. Why do it? Why not create a nice new modern house?
Okay.
The same with all of these stories. Why mess with them? Why not keep the original and then create new stories for the new era? I don't understand.
Anna, I'm going to go to you. Anna, I mean, he's got a point. Look, I'm not coming after Sex in the City. I'm not saying that's got to be 4 or 5 blokes, yeah, all beer drinking, cigarettes on the go. No, I'm not saying I leave your stuff alone, right? Can't you leave Bond?
There's been 7 James Bonds. There hasn't been one. And I think characters like Mickey Mouse and Winnie the Pooh, you can't get someone else to play them, but you can get anybody to play an MI6 spy. So what's the problem here? It's just old-fashioned.
Let's get a white man to play Laura Croft, shall we?
Say a woman can't be a hero in a film.
I don't know if that's what people are saying, though. I think people are just saying, can we leave James Bond as it is? Joanna, I suppose the big question for me would be this, right, which is the point of why this chap said it was because he thinks, and he was a spy. I don't want to blow his cover. I think he blew that years ago. But he was saying that he does think that if Bond was black and or a woman, that would lead to more black people and women joining our security services. Do you think that's true?
And he will get more because he's done. Yeah, definitely. I think so. You know, we all know that representation matters, and movies and film are the best ways of marketing sometimes. So I think when people watch something, and let's not forget that James Bond isn't only just watched by middle-aged men, it's also watched by, you know, young people growing up. And I think that if you can see that type of person in you as a reflection of you, then obviously it's great marketing for them. They know maybe that they've got a big diversity problem and they need best role models, and James Bond is the biggest one. Sorry, I'm still talking.
Sorry.
James Bond is the best representation of it. So what better marketing would there be for MI6 than to have some form of diversity? And what you were saying about changing the story, how is it changing the story by just having a different shade of skin on the person who's called James Bond? They're not changing any part of the story because the story never actually focuses on his background or his ethnicity.
That's interesting because I'll put that to Henry now. Then I suppose are you more bothered, Henry, about the idea of Bond being a woman than you are about, say, Bond being black?
Yes, I am. And Bond can be black. I don't have a big problem with that at all. I don't have a problem with it at all. But look, you know, it's like Laura Croft in Tomb Raider being a bloke. You know, it just doesn't work. And so I'm sorry, but and the other thing is that it is totally untrue to imply to potential recruits that James Bond reflects the reality of working for the Secret Intelligence Service. Yeah. He doesn't. And so if you're recruiting people on the basis of James Bond, you've got the wrong people.
Well, I mean, I suppose there is that, actually. I mean, that would have to be completely and utterly nuts, wouldn't it? The idea that if there's people going around there who, you know, end up in the most ridiculous situations possible, I suppose. But look, all of you, thank you very, very much. We got there in the end with connections, etc. And it was former UKIP leader Henry Bolton, social commentator Joanna Jarjue, and the writer and broadcaster Anna May Mangan. Great stuff. So who do you agree with? As spy chiefs say that they hope the next James Bond will be either black or a woman because it would boost diversity to MI6. Should we leave James Bond and the classics alone? Al on Twitter says, I won't watch the next James Bond film if they change the character simply to exclude white people. OK? Rohan on Twitter says, just leave Bond alone and write a proper story for a black female spy. Just lazy and mediocre writers who can't come up with something new. I just think they don't seem to care, though, do they, about This idea that wokeifying everything inevitably hits you in the pocket. It's called go woke, go broke for a reason, a lot of the time. A lot of the time. And yet these massive corporations and these massive franchises will keep doing it and almost just take the hit. But Martin says, never mind diversity. What about an actor's capability? Isn't that more important? Or have we lost our minds over woke box ticking? Well, your verdict's in. Here we go to the world of Twitter, now known as X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. And 95% of you agree that we should leave classics like James Bond alone. Just 5% of you say we shouldn't. There we go.